This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by productivity authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers Experience with myself, Adam Strong. And today we have a returning guest actually here on the Game Changers Experience. His name is Les Evans, a really good friend of mine. If you don't know who Les is, he was actually back. He actually recorded a show with us back on episode 33, right? So back in the archives. But today he's back. I've asked him to come back on the show because he's actually discovered some interesting breakthroughs, and I wanted him to share those breakthroughs with you guys. So who is Les Evans? Well, Les is a former CEO for an investment company. He's an international speaker. He's spoken in over 24 countries. He's spoken to thousands of entrepreneurs and small businesses as well. He's worked with millionaires as well as billionaires, as well as sports stars, athletes, and entrepreneurs alike. I call him actually the disruptive marketing genius. I actually labeled him that. And he was like, wow, that's impressive. I love that. But anyway, listen, enough chit chat. We're going to be talking a little bit about something that I am fascinated. Now, you guys have probably heard of neuroscience, right? So neuroscience is being used everywhere, right? Sometimes there's this kind of what I call conception about what neuroscience is or is not. But what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about a concept called nudges. Now, you're probably thinking, what the hell is a nudge? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to be sharing some examples. We're going to be sharing how you guys can get your prospects to make faster decisions using nudges. And we're going to be talking about some of the common nudges and what Les has discovered and how you can increase your sales as well. So without further ado, Les Evans, welcome to the show.
Woohoo! Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel like Elvis Presley. Thank you.
Great to have you back on the show. And I know I'm excited about today. And I was going to ask you actually, I mean, it's been 18 months, which is a long time, 18 months since you were last on the show and whatever it is. Mm-hmm. How, I suppose my opening question is what have you been doing over the last 18 months? And what's kind of what I call the big discoveries that you've learned over the last 18 months? Because I'm a big believer of, entrepreneurs and speakers alike and our podcast guests are always evolving. I'd love to know what your thoughts are.
Well, thanks. That's actually a great question. And the answer to that is I had probably like a lot of people, obviously we've seen a massive shift in the world, that needless to say. Right. But I found something really interesting going on prior to like 2020. I noticed it when I was speaking in Singapore and Australia, that I noticed that people at the seminar were reacting differently than they had in the past to the material I was talking about. And I was like, well, this is rather curious, like what's going on here? And then, so I kind of and then of course, when the whole COVID thing hit, I decided to really dive back in and say, what is going on with human behavior? And I found a couple of different things. Number one, it's kind of obvious that obviously we're in a very dynamic world right now. There's a word for it, dynamic. It's challenging, it's difficult, it's frustrating. That's one thing. So we have that dynamic going along with a lot of fear and mistrust and stuff. But having said that, prior to that, really what's taken place, I dove into something called neuroscience, which is basically just how our brains work. And what's happened is we learned more in the past 5 years about human behavior and buying behavior than all of human history. Mm-hmm. So the biggest discovery is this: everything we knew about why people buy and how they buy is wrong. Because, I mean, for all the billions of dollars spent on marketing research, what the scientists have found is we are not logical. So for years, people thought we are thinking machines that feel once in a while. Turns out it's the exact opposite. We're feeling machines that think Rarely. so, so what happens is when we use our sales and marketing strategies, we're always trying to do like facts and figures, features and benefits. We're writing copy to be persuasive and make a logical argument, but the real buying decision is made subconsciously in the primal brain, and that speaks a different language altogether. So basically, yes, we still have to have our facts and figures, but the logical brain merely justifies the sale. It literally cannot buy at all. So that's a big surprise, right? Now, what's really interesting about this is there's certain little buttons you can push in the subconscious brain, and they're called nudges. And it's kind of like this. Nudges, traditional marketing, like I was explaining a few minutes ago, has always been based on trying to get somebody to buy, mostly for our reasons and not the buyer's reasons.
Right.
So the reason people buy is really for their own reasons. And that's actually more complicated than we ever thought, because we're not rational. It turns out we are completely and utterly irrational. Like I have a really good friend here in near Toronto, Canada, and he just got himself a used, but it might as well be new, a McLaren automobile. And I can assure you the reason he bought that is because it has a 0.022 drag coefficient ratio and it's good on fuel, right?
I have no clue what that means, by the way. I don't know about you guys, but maybe unless they're
it means it's slippery through the wind and it goes fast, right? So what's really interesting is neuroscience that I'm talking about here was all about how do we talk to the subconscious brain and persuade it. Yeah. But it's really gone underground in the past 5 years, as I've noticed, because all the big companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, in particular today, governments and politicians are using nudging. And nudging is kind of like, instead of trying to push a horse to do something, you simply give it what it wants. You simply hold an apple in front of it, and it will come to you and eat the apple, and the horse will go wherever you want. So the best way I can describe it is you're basically you're instead of working against the brain and arguing with the logical brain, you're simply working with the human behavior that's very natural. So human beings have very natural behaviors that we do automatically, and there's certain things, certain emotions, and certain things we respond to. And if you just put them out there, and I'm going to give you some examples of nudges, but it's basically, if you put these out there, people have a natural proclivity to do this. For example, and I want to use this because you and I talked about this for a second, okay? Remember the bathrooms in Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam?
Oh, in Amsterdam, yeah.
So this is a perfect... Okay. This is kind of silly. I think we could go there. We're 18 years old here, so
Absolutely.
It's okay. So one of the challenges with men, particularly in bathrooms, we have, urinals basically when we have to use the facilities. And as much as we aim to do well, quite often our aim is off the mark and it becomes problematic and messy in the bathrooms. So a neuroscientist said, one thing little boys do is they tend to practice aiming when they're little boys out on the farm. And so what they did is they painted little house flies in the urinals. And sure enough, men being men, remember from being little boys, we're trying to aim to hit the flies. That's called a nudge. And interestingly enough, it actually improved the hygiene by something like 35%. So it's incredible. So the best way I can describe a nudge is this. You use something that is natural to a human being's behavior. It's an organic strategy and it costs nothing.
Wow.
This is the biggest thing. You can make slight shifts in human behavior working with the subconscious and it costs nothing. It's a behavioral change and it's simply shifting somebody's perspective. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely. 100% makes sense. Yeah, definitely. And I know that you're going to be sharing a few other examples of how to shift someone's perspective. But
I think
it's interesting. So you were talking about shifting someone's perspective, but then how does that relate to people's awareness? So like, do you know what I mean? It's like maybe someone might not actually be aware of what their, I don't know, their particular behavior or whatever it is that you want them to do type of thing, or expectation or whatever. How does that differ?
Well, actually, that's the sneaky part about nudges. They are designed to slip to the subconscious below your level of awareness. Most times you'll have no clue. Well, mind you, I've shared a chart with you today that contains 18 nudges. We'll talk about some of those today that you can use as business strategies. I'll discuss how. Yep. But what they do is, because they're natural behaviors, unless you know what they are, you'll be hoodwinked by them. So they slip. It's not a conscious thing. They go straight to the bottom. Let me give you an example in a retail store, for example. Okay? Sure. Really simple, because that's easy to relate to. So a retail store, for example, if you want to sell more toothpaste, one of the things you can do is put mirrored strips right at eye level where people are buying the toothpaste and toothbrushes. Because people, what do? When they see a mirror, every person you know looks in a mirror. That's a very natural behavior. Am I right?
Very true. So, unless it's the women, they tend to apply makeup rather than looking at their teeth.
Yeah, but I don't want to get into trouble with my wife on that one. But so you put mirrored strips right at eye level where people are buying the toothpaste, and they're going to be like this. That's a nudge right there. That's a nudge. It's making things super, super obvious. For example, I don't know if they did this where you were, but here in Canada, because of the social distancing things, what they did is they put little stickers on the floor with 2 feet, 6 feet apart.
Right.
Same. That's a nudge.
In fact, I was sorry to interrupt, but I was actually gonna say to you, like, those stickers, they kind of remind me of, hey, who do you think you are? Do you think I'm stupid or something, kind of thing? Do you know what I mean? But I suppose it creates complacency, I guess. I don't know.
Well, what happens is one of the nudges is called conformity. Conformity is the nudge. Yeah. So if people, and authority is another nudge. So the government, it put the sticker there, so I must conform and I must follow authority. And people literally would stand on the stickers. Now, what's really funny is I actually used that many years ago when I was working at a trade show. And the problem is the main trade show was in this big arena, and they had stuck my booth to a room to the side. And everybody who walked in, human beings are just like horses. They look straight ahead, okay? Everybody who would walk into the trade show would immediately go to the main room, look around, then walk out, and I'd get totally ignored. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if you've ever done trade shows or things like this before, but people can relate. So I spent thousands of dollars in this booth. I was like, I've got to do something. And I happened to have some, recipe cards that were, neon psychedelic colors, pinks and reds and greens or whatever. I cut out arrows and I taped them to the floor so that when people would walk in, the arrows went straight to my booth. And the funny thing, swear to God, the organizer flipped out on me, and you can't do that. And I said, either I get my money back or the arrows are staying. And so they did, and every single person who walked in came straight to my booth.
Love it.
That's a nudge. That's a nudge. It's simple, a little stuff like that. But if you want to, I helped a client, for example, who sells beautiful costume jewelry. Great stuff. Yep. And they sell them in tourism stores in Singapore, but they weren't getting the buying happening like they should have. And I said, all we're going to do is we're going to get some portable LED lamps that are brighter than hell and shine in. Sure enough, when you walk in, that's all you can see because jewelry glitters, right?
Right.
So that's a nudge. People are automatically attracted to bright things. We kind of laugh about cats and dogs chasing laser printers or pointers. Yep. Human beings are exactly the same thing. Look, it's a UFO. So those are some kinds of nudges, for example, in retail. But they used one that was really funny in France because people are getting hurt or killed crossing intersections with jaywalking.
Right.
So what they did is they put special sensors in, and when somebody would jaywalk, all of a sudden this really loud sound of a car screeching would go on. Yeah, and then they would take a camera and get a photo of the person's face and display it as they cross the street. And so the person could see what they look like just before they were going to get killed. They're all like,
Holy
Like,
crap.
yeah,
That's
that's called
insane.
nudging.
Oh,
So
wow.
you're taking natural behaviors and modifying them. So there's all sorts of fun tricks like that are fun. But you can another one for retail again is putting things at eye level. It sounds so simple, but it's really being mastering the obvious.
Yeah.
Don't
It's,
let people use their imaginations.
it's interesting, right? So, and I'm sure this is a nudge, by the way, where you put basically the premium products at eye level, and then you put the non-premium products at the bottom, yet the non-premium products are actually better than the premium products and they're cheaper,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Absolutely. So let me share some of the nudges from a marketing standpoint, particularly if you're online or an entrepreneur. We can use some of them off the charts that I've sent you. And then I'd love to go through an advert that was placed by the UK government to encourage people to get their vaccines and how nudges are used in that. And I think your audience is going to be blown away when they hear this.
I think we're definitely we're gonna have to have you share that. What I was gonna say, I know that you guys are listening to this on the audio or whatever it might be, and what I was gonna say to you, if you haven't already got a notebook and pen handy, you should already have it there, because I know that I want you to kind of like imagine. And sometimes it can be really hard to kind of visualize what like Les is saying, but some of the examples that he's given are really super simple. So I know that Les, you've created, I think 18 different nudges. Is that right? Or you discovered 18 different nudges, right?
Yep.
So maybe we could like go through some of the most common ones and how they can be applied in the business world today.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take a few that you would already recognize, but you just didn't know they were a nudge. For example, if you go to a website and you see a trust symbol or a badge on there, you've probably seen websites like that.
Yeah, like TripAdvisor.
Pardon me?
Like TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that's a nudge right there, because another nudge that I mentioned just before is authority. Anything that comes from authority that looks official, like a badge or a trust symbol, is a nudge. We are hardwired for survival, and part of our survival recognizes the pecking order.
Got it.
So anytime you appeal to authority, or if it's certified, this is why certifications are so important. I know some people who are certifiably crazy, but that's another story. But so that's one of them. Scarcity is another one. That's pretty obvious, fear of missing out. But what's really interesting is how many ways you can use scarcity. Too many people, unfortunately, use scarcity and say, well, if you don't buy the car today, it's going to be gone. It's been so overused. But there are other ways to use that. But that's one of them. Here's another one that's really, really popular. A challenge. Challenges are so popular in online marketing. I know you know this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We are naturally competitive. It's all like, again, the primal brain is all about survival and competing for better mates, better food. It's all about competing with resources. So we are hardwired to compete. Men compete with men, they compete with women. We all compete with each other. So you throw down a challenge, you throw down the gauntlet, people just automatically go towards that. You might not, and it's funny, if you can't change somebody's behavior, the old saying was throw down the gauntlet or throw down the glove. You challenge somebody and all of a sudden they automatically rise to the occasion. It's like pressing, again, these are psychological buttons. So we've got, that, or here's another one I believe you've used. What else is another nudge? People like games and quizzes. You can lead people's behavior through games and quizzes. So what I'm doing here is just throwing out some of the obvious ones that you've seen, in marketing, but you didn't know that they were a nudge. What I'd like to, we'll get into a couple of this. Of course, like if you have reviews, like I said, TripAdvisor reviews, that's social proof. Right. And social proof is part of conformity. Well, if they're buying it, I'm buying it too. Does that make sense? So the key, the more of these things you can use in your marketing, the less thinking people will do. Because the one thing we all hate hearing is, I want to think about it. So what nudges do is they basically get people to kind of choose you by default. In fact, sometimes, like, here's another one, and you see this all the time. It's called obvious choice. You ever go sign up for one of these subscription plans and they have the uber duper entrepreneur one and then the you suck for free one, and then there's the right, and then there's the one in the middle, preferred choice that's highlighted in blue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of obvious, but that's another one. It's your choice. Here's another one. Amazon does this all the time. It's called your favorite. Based on what you've purchased before, we thought you'd be interested in this. Here's your favorites. See, because people love an appeal to the ego. Ego is a big one. Status, in fact, I can just share this with you right now. The greatest driver of the primal brain is status. By far, everything that gives you status, which is why my friend bought his McLaren. That's pretty high status, right? But think about it. Think about this from a just obvious point. People love to be first. They love to be on top. They love to be known because when you're, like if you're a movie star, rock star, whatever, athlete, you have status. And people who have status, they get free shit that we, pardon my language, don't have to pay for. You get the food, you get the hotels, you get the jets, you have better resources. So, that's kind of one of them. And another really simple one that's used all the time is free offers. That's called reciprocal. I'll scratch my back, you scratch mine, right? So these are the really, really simple ones. But a couple of the really cool ones, if you want to get into those, we can share a couple of those too. I hope this is making sense so far.
Absolutely. I mean, because there are 18 different nudges and whatever it is, you've shared some really good examples of where, especially in marketing, like you mentioned around marketing and how one can apply a particular nudge and at what time or whatever it is. And maybe you guys just didn't even know what a nudge was, right? Without even, it's like, whoa, I didn't think it was I didn't see it as a nudge, right? I'm sure that you're probably thinking, or whatever it might be. I wanted to ask you, this is before we kind of get into some of the other kind of nudges that you mentioned. One of the questions that I wrote down here actually is, are there any consequences of using nudges or how they're being used? Because one of the things that came to my mind, and I'm sure that I'm pretty certain that this is the case, but scammers are also using nudges as well. So I guess you've got to be kind of like really self-aware about, okay, is this for real type of thing? I mean, maybe we could talk about the consequences of how nudges are being used.
Absolutely. In fact, I will, your audience may be thinking, well, okay, I kind of know this stuff. Yeah, right. I know what less is taught. I've seen that. Like I've seen the trust symbol. Okay, appeal to authority, scarcity. I get it. Yeah, okay. But see, again, the challenge here is do not lower your opinion of these things just based on their simplicity. They are so powerful. There are some serious moral and ethical arguments going on in the scientific community about these things because they may seem really simple. Oh yeah, appeal to authority. Okay, I get it. Yeah, competition. I get it. It is so powerful. Again, it slides right below your awareness. And I think when I share this government ad with you, you're going to go, oh my God, because the truth is, there are real ethical questions that go with it. You can really seriously manipulate human behavior with this stuff. One of the reasons I put that chart together, for example, that I sent to you, was to use it as a defense against nudging being used. It's like anything. It can be used as a psychological tool. We can use it to enhance human behavior, empower people, or we can, manipulate them to do awfully nasty stuff. And as you know, you and I see completely eye to eye on this. It is not necessary to manipulate people. Selling is really creating a better world for people. I like to use nudges to help people get over their limiting beliefs so they can get what they want.
Right.
Because quite often somebody will want to buy something, but there's a mental block there, for example.
That makes
so
sense.
To me, that's the highest, noblest ethical use of that stuff. But that's a great question. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd love for you to share your example about the UK government, where I have to hear this purely because I'm British as well. And for you guys that aren't, but you've got to, we've got to hear this. But yeah, far away.
Yeah.
What is the example?
Okay, so I'll just preface this by 1 minute. There are two things the primal brain really responds to well. One is nudges, like I said.
Yep.
The other is commands, because we're so driven to obey authority. When you give a command like, eat your soup, yes, sir. And I know it sounds serious, funny, but here's what happens. Like, for example, my wife might say to me, when you go to the supermarket, don't forget to buy the milk.
Right.
Well, the primal brain does not understand time. So don't is like doing something in the future. It doesn't understand that. It also does not understand not doing something.
Okay.
Do not forget. It doesn't know. So what the primal brain hears is forget the milk, which is a command. And so if you want, I know it sounds silly, but if you put in your advertising copy, people say, let's not forget our honored dead. Well, the primal brain is hearing forget. What we should be saying is, let us always remember. So that's a command. So in your marketing, here's a marketing tip for you in your copy. You can put commands in there. Remember to do this. Make sure you sign up today. Don't use negatives. Talk in present tense and use a command. So having said that, let's look at this thing. I'll read it to you. So this was I guess this was a text message sent out by the UK government. It has 6 nudges and 3 commands. First, I'm going to read it to you. Here it is. You have reached the top of the queue and are a priority for getting a free NHS COVID-19 vaccine. Please book yours now at this website or by calling 119. I'll read it again. You have reached the top of the queue and are a priority for getting a free NHS COVID-19 vaccine. Please book yours now at this website or by calling 119. Okay, that's the text.
Got it.
Now, how does it sound to you? Pretty innocuous? Just pretty plain?
Pretty plain language, pretty straight to the point.
Yeah, right? It doesn't sound like you think, okay, there's nothing going on here. Okay, so this is interesting because it was actually a behavioral scientist that I got this from.
I bet.
And I said, you missed a couple in there. So here it is. First line, you have reached. Reached is a commitment.
Okay.
People love commitments. That's on my chart. Take a look. You have reached the top. Top is status. That's on the chart.
Yep.
Right? You have reached the top of the queue. Oh, Q is what? Social proof. Right. The conformity, the queue, you're in line. And I know how much they love queues in the UK. Especially at Heathrow. Okay?
I'm right.
Okay. You've reached the top. So you've reached, that's number 1. The top, that's number 2. The queue is number 3. Right. And are a priority, that's scarcity.
Yes, yeah.
That's 4 already. Getting is a command.
Uh-huh.
Getting is a command. You're getting a free, that's reciprocity. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Free NHS, that's National Health Service. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay, so that's the authority. And here comes the next command. Book yours now at this website or calling 119. So commitment, status, scarcity, social proof, authority, reciprocity plus 3 commands. Getting, book now, call.
Wow.
See how that works?
Isn't that interesting, ladies and gents? I love that. That's a great example, by the way.
It's pretty crazy. Now, again, we know why they're doing this, but here's an interesting insight. Today, particularly governments and politicians are hiring behavioral scientists by the sackful. In fact, most of the big marketing companies, and I think your audience deserves to hear this, most of the big companies like Apple and Google, they're hiring not marketing people, they're hiring behavioral science to use this stuff. That's how powerful and how big this is getting. But like I said, what I wanted to do is share some of this so people understand what's going on. So,
And I think Apple have actually been doing it for years, haven't they? I mean, like especially with the prior launch of, say, the new iPhone or the new iMacBook or whatever it might be, right? And you've got people queuing up for 20 days before a product comes out, and they sleep outside, and it's like, I'm gonna get mine, gonna be the first. It's the status, it's the
Apple.
It's crazy.
Apple is a great example. I can give you one. Here's one called, this is a nudge called the halo effect.
Huh. Okay.
Or it's also can be called the anchor effect. Now, what the anchor effect is, you can business people, let's do halo first. I'll discuss both.
Got it.
So halo effect is, do you remember when the Apple Watch first came out and they had a 18 karat gold Apple Watch that was like $25,000?
Yeah, I remember that. Wasn't it like the Chinese that were buying them in the thousands or something?
Okay, so why do you suppose they were buying that watch for? Status.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the interesting thing. The halo effect says that if you have because people love status.
Right.
So if I have a $25,000 gold or 20,000 pounds with your currency, gold Apple Watch, the halo effect is it makes mine seem more valuable, even though it's only $5. See, well, you don't have a $20,000 watch. Yeah, but I have an Apple Watch. So Rolex does this too. Like, you can get the most expensive Rolex is probably $250,000 or $300,000.
Yep.
Now, I don't have that Rolex, but this is a Rolex. That's halo effect. And as marketers, it's kind of what we call an anchor too. If you're a marketer, you can use this. For example, let's say you're a coach or consultant, and you're trying to get your fees up. And really, fees and value is mostly based on perception, because advice that's valuable to one person is useless to the next. But and I've actually done this. I was in Singapore speaking at an event of mine, and I said, you know what? I'm going to use the anchor effect and the halo effect here. I just blurted out as part of what I was saying. I was like, well, my top coaching package is $150,000, which was pretty big.
That's pretty big.
Yeah. And what was fascinating, so what I'm doing is, what the anchor effect is the first price that your client hears is the reference point.
Right.
So if I throw out a big number like, this guy makes $150,000, no, truth be told, I don't have a $150,000 package. I never did. But it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I could create one. But what it did was set the tone, and everybody all of a sudden is like, oh my God, this is not the garden variety coach here. This guy is halo effect. Again, that kind of thing. And so what had happened is, at that particular event, a fellow came up to me, and he said, listen, I don't think I need a $150,000 package, but what can you do for 20,000 US? Out of the blue. I never even offered that.
Damn.
That's the power of nudging. He just walked up and said, you're obviously the real deal. And I am, thank God. But I had made no sales pitch, no presentation, no offer for any kind of coaching service whatsoever. He's just like, can you work with me? How does 20,000? What can you do with that? So that's the power of using the anchor effect or the halo effect. And every business could do that. You can create a premier product or service that maybe is completely out of range, and you never even offer it, but it sets a precedent for value as a marketer.
That's a really interesting thought process, because one of my questions was all around, how can we become more valuable to prospects? And you've just shown an example of how to become more valuable in your business, right? And how to increase profitability by like twofold.
Well, it really, like, human behavior is so strange because it's really based on perception.
Right.
And value is just like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so is value.
Value is subjective, though, isn't it, really?
It really is. And the funny thing is like, because I've done business coaching all over the world, some of the things that, some of the suggestions that I would give clients to help them increase their business would seem to an ordinary person so simple. and so obvious. And they're like, what? You got paid $25,000 for that idea, or 50,000? And I go, yeah, well, anybody could have came up with that. And I go, well, actually, but they didn't, and they did implement it. And therein lies the rub, right? You know, it's that old joke about what the plumber that comes out to fix, you know, the guy's basement is filling with water and he doesn't want to pay the plumber because he's too much money. And the wife says, enough of this nonsense. Get the plumber charges him like 500 pounds. And the guy's like, what the heck? Because he just comes in and tinkers around and turns a knob and that's it. And, charge 500 pounds. And meanwhile, he's like, I want to see a written invoice. And the plumber's like, $10 for turning knob, 490 pounds for knowing where to turn, right?
Love it.
So,
Love it.
But yeah, if you take some of these examples and one of them is offering, we do this all the time, free trials. That's what I call dipping your toe in the pool.
Yep.
So all of these things, the more of them, you can use them very, very ethically. These are things that people naturally gravitate towards. That's the best way to explain it.
Makes sense.
It's just like, yeah, it's like a brilliant one was when the utility companies started sending you your utility bill and comparing you to how your neighbors are doing. How are you stacking up against your neighbor's energy use? Yep. Talk about a guilt trip, right? Because that's the whole competition thing. And you're throwing down the glove. And this is what's going on in business right now. It's incredible. Actually.
So here's a thought process, actually, because I know that some of our listeners, all of our listeners have different businesses. They're all in different industries and they all sell in different ways. And so one of the common ways, obviously, is selling over the phone, whether it be, whether it be from a warm call or a warm prospect or a cold prospect. How can nudges be used in phone call conversations in order to, maybe kind of sway someone into maybe even like investing in you? I don't know, but what's your thoughts?
Well, again, you can use all of the same sort of ideas.
Yeah.
For example, I use a philosophy again, this is a belief system I have where I will walk away from any client if I don't think they're the right one. I don't care how much money they're going to throw at me.
Right.
Because that's just, to me, for my values, out of integrity. But Absolutely. I use it as a scarcity play. I say, listen, I don't know if I can work with you or not. We'll have a discussion. If it doesn't work out, no big deal. But if we do, and I have very much a push away strategy. I push people away. And you know what happens when you push people away? People want things more. When I was working with a big coaching organization, of course, because you met me through that venue, they would have me talk about myself as a coach and my background and things like this. And the first thing I tell people is I said, listen, I'm very honored to be here. I think you guys are all wonderful. I just want you to know that I can't help all of you. My waiting list right now is over 6 months long. I can make some priority changes, but we'll have to see how that works out. And they're like, I want that guy. Because when I say I've got waiting list for 6 months, that is social proof and it's scarcity at the same time. And status, I might add.
I was going to say, it's also, how is positioning also status?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Cool. The other thing that I was going to ask you, actually, I wrote down on here as well, is if you're looking to raise investment, I suppose doing your pitch presentation to an investor, a VC, an angel, or private equity firm, I suppose in a way, if you're really good at your pitch presentation, you'd put nudges in your presentation. Is that true? And how does one apply it?
Absolutely. You absolutely do. Well, for one thing, you can make you can build in a sense of scarcity in fear of missing out on this opportunity. Right. Now, people do that, but quite often they do it the wrong way. You don't want to miss out. You don't want to lose out. It's like they're trying to sell something. When I try to, for example, if I'm going to sell somebody on perhaps working with them to help employ some of these techniques, for example.
Right.
I don't tell people, I go, listen, you're going to make, if you get on here, you're going to make all this, you're going to make 10x and all that stuff. I don't do that. I use scarcity because I say in a way like this, and it's consequential. So what are the consequences of not doing this? For example, we have an investment property here, or whatever the investment is, company, organization, say, let me ask you a question. If you pass up on this and it goes big, how are you going to feel about that? See, instead of I'm asking a question like Socrates will, if you make a statement to the primal brain is very afraid of threat. It's always looking for threats. And somebody wanting your money is a real threat. Right? So if I say, I can do this for you, and yeah, at what cost? Right. So rather than making a threat and saying, well, if you don't sign up here and subscribe to our investment fund, you're going to lose out. And the guy's going to, whoever the prospect is, they're going to go, get bent, right? But if I ask them, I say, you've taken a look at everything here. Let me ask you a question. If you don't act upon this, how much do you think you stand to lose? How will you feel if this goes really well? Now, I know there's risk, but we've done things to mitigate risk. But how will you feel if this takes off and you just miss the next gold rush and the next Uber? How will you feel? Because now you're using a nudge to use the primal brain's fear of missing out. It's usually because a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So we can ask a question to do a nudge. I'm not going to tell you how much you're going to lose. I'm going to just ask you how are you going to feel if you lose? I think I've said this once before. There's been more women get married, not because the guy wanted the girl, because he was more afraid of losing her. And I don't mean to be, what's the word here? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but people are much more afraid of losing stuff than they are getting it. That's a proven fact. In fact, the ratio of loss to reward is 2-to-1. We're 2 times as more afraid to lose. So
very cool.
Is that a good example?
Absolutely, 100%. Very good example indeed. Yeah, I love that. I mean, listen, I think we could pretty much, take this conversation, for a long time, because there's just so much. It's like, it sparks up your kind of self-awareness, and I'm like, do I really behave in that way? Right? It's like kind of
yes, we do.
It's like you're a mind reader. Are you a mind reader, Les? Can you think in my mind? It's like, how do you know this? I'm sure that some of you guys that are listening, you're probably thinking exactly that. But listen, this has been great conversation, and yeah, I hope that for you guys that are listening, by the way, I hope that you've been enjoying what me and Les have been talking about. I've personally found it quite fascinating, and he's given some really good examples about how you could apply it in your business, how you could apply it in your copy, how you can apply it on a call or a conversation. I mean, there's so many great ways. And here's a food for thought here. The next time you're in the supermarket, or next time you're out shopping, have a look to see how many nudges you can see, and see what other persuasional tactics, should we say, that people are using or businesses are using in order to sway people's buying habits. So listen, Les, just want to say thanks very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Absolutely. And by the way, we did this for the greater good of humanity, which, by the way, is another nudge.
Love it. Is there any, I was going to say to you, just in terms of like a summary, because I'd like to round it up into like a summary and whatever it is. Do you have like a summary of our conversation and how kind of, kind of like a cherry on the top, if you like?
Well, the one thing I would say to people, if you really want to employ this in your business, the first thing to do is, you actually said it, was to just, now that you have some self-awareness of these things, now that you have self-awareness, pay attention and see how many are being used in daily life. And once you start, you'll start to smart them very, very quickly. And you'll start to understand when you see them, sorry, the mouth is running faster than I think. When you see them used in real life, for example, like I did in that government text, you'll see different ways how they're used in context. how they're used in context. So you can use, because the nudge is used very differently. The reason I mentioned at the very end, the higher purpose and the greater good, the entire, COVID campaign has always been about people nudging for the greater good. That's one of them. Authority is another one. Status is another one. You're in the queue. So there's about 6 or 7 that have been used regularly. So like I said, the great thing to do is take a look at what's going on, just situational awareness, and pay attention, particularly if you want to have some fun, listen to your politicians, if you can stand it, and then and watch how many nudges they use, and you'll be shocked, actually.
Yeah.
But it will also be a very good lesson to learn how you can apply them ethically in your business.
It's good practice, I think, more than anything else, which I think is a great thing. So I just want to say thanks very much for being on the show today. For you guys that would love to contact Les to learn more about nudges and how you could apply in your business, then feel free to click on his links, social media links below, and you can do that. And just mention that when you do message Les or reach out to him, please do mention the podcast so he knows exactly where you can put 2 and 2 together. And I'm sure that in due time, within a short space of time, he'll be able to reach out to you and hopefully help you and move you forwards and whatever it is. So without further ado, just want to say thanks again to Mr. Les Evans. And for you guys that are listening, I hope you've enjoyed today's show, and hopefully we'll see you back in again on the next Game Changers experience. From me and Les, take care and see you soon.
Cheers.
Hey guys, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to today's episode on the Game Changers experience. I would be gratefully appreciated if you could leave a good or a bad review. It doesn't matter, 1 or a 5-star review, whichever you prefer, on any of the platforms, whether it be on Apple, whether it be on Spotify, Podchaser, etc. And please leave a testimonial or review about our podcast. And if you have enjoyed our podcast, then I look forward to seeing you on the next Game Changers experience. Take care, see you soon, etc. And please leave a testimonial or review about our podcast. And if you have enjoyed our podcast, then I look forward to seeing you on the next Game Changers experience. Take care, see you soon.